it was too late and her baby had already died. And they were able to revive her baby, but her baby only lived on for 18 days. And this is something that we had struggled through in 2003. We had gone through what had happened to me. And here was immigration. And the hardest thing we had to figure out was, how do we take that baby out of the grave so that my sister could take that baby with her once she gets deported? And these are the realities that our communities go through. We have been living in the United States for 21 years now. My dad, when we left Ecuador, we decided to come to this nation because my dad had a vision. He had heard a calling that God said, move to the United States, go seek God. And many people might think that's crazy, but I think God talks to you, right? Or God guides you to do certain things. And we came to this nation. My dad became a pastor. We started the process, the visa process. We hired an attorney to do the work. But the attorney, unfortunately, even though she got paid to do her job, submitted the wrong paperwork. And by the time it was our time to be able to stay in this country, it had elapsed. And so we were already undocumented. There was nothing for us to do. And so it was either leaving the United States and not knowing if we could come back in 10 years, or staying here where we had already built a foundation, where we had our partners and where we knew that we were safe here. All of that really started changing me and started making me realize that the fight that I had for immigration reform wasn't just about the DREAM Act, wasn't just about a law, but rather changing the culture and changing the way people saw us immigrants. Many people saw us as takers. Many people, the nurses and the nurse practitioner that didn't want to see my sister, saw us as a burden to our community. They didn't see my sister as a human being, as somebody that was carrying a child. They didn't want to see her, and they turned her away. And the doctors and the main hospital came and apologized and said, I'm sorry, but it was already too late for her and her baby who had passed away. So to me, that really turned into why we needed to tell our story. And my friend Felipe and Juan called me one day and said, Gabby, let's walk from Miami to DC. Let's go tell our story. Let's go to the nation's capital and share and show our faces and show how much we love this nation, how much we want an opportunity by giving our all, by walking. Back in the day, people weren't called dreamers. People weren't even called undocumented. We didn't even know. It was just without papers. So in 2010, we embarked on this journey from Miami to Washington, D.C. It was 4 months. We walked an average of 18 miles a day, and we stopped city by city, talking to everyday folks, talking to people at gas stations, talking to people at churches, talking to people at schools, because we knew that right now there was a cancerous disease in our country of fear, of ignorance, of lack of understanding of immigrants in our community. And we needed to combat that by us telling our own stories and sharing the plight of our families to this nation. So we did that, and along the way we had a lot of different scares, I would say, but also a lot of realizations. One of the realizations was that we still had an ugly in our country, and that the KKK, which once upon a time I thought I would never see, that I thought it was something that I had seen in a notebook, was alive and well. And the other thing that we saw was, I think, the reason why so many people come here. And it's the beauty of this nation, is the heart of America, and it's the people who even though might be against us, once they learned about the issue, welcome us. And we had many people that welcomed us into their home, many people that helped us. And the reason why we called it the Trail of Dreams, and the reason why we did this is because we wanted to recreate what was once upon a time the Underground Railroad. We wanted to share people and show that there was people out there that might not be engaged, might not be the ones calling the senators or representatives to do something, but felt that we needed to do something. So let me see if it loaded. Sometimes it doesn't load. Yeah, it didn't load. But when you have some time, I could probably give you just a small preview, and then you're going to want to watch it. Oh, I backed it. Okay, it's not going to work. But when you have some time, this is a YouTube video of the walk, and it just shares, less than 3 minutes on our experience and what happened. And this went all the way from Miami when we left to right about Georgia. It doesn't go more than that. But during the Trail of Dreams, we also did something that was not really necessarily what we wanted to do, which was we sparked a movement, and we really allowed for other young people to see their power that they had in their story, but also young people to understand and know that we couldn't be fighting this, behind the scenes, that we needed to be front and center. And one of the asks of this walk was for President Obama to grant us and give us this thing called deferred action. And deferred action has allowed, or DACA has allowed young people, over 500,000 young people in this nation, to be able to get a work permit, get a social security number, and not have that fear of deportation. So once we reached the White House, we had asked the president to meet with us. And of course, they came back and said, no, we cannot have undocumented people in the White House, which was okay, because we still were going to persist and go. And that's where Mark mentioned we went all the way over there. And as a symbolic gesture, we took off our shoes and put our shoes in front of the White House steps, or the fence outside. There's not really steps. And it was hot, and we burned our feet. We should have thought of that plan better. But we left our shoes there to show not just the president, but other people that we also needed to kind of, walk in those steps and take a stand on what was happening across the nation. Yeah. It was 4 total that we walked from Miami to D.C. We did have a lot of people that came, that learned about it. We had some guy from Spain that learned about our walk and flew to come and walk with us because he was like, this is really big. And we're like, no, it's not, but okay. He knew, he saw it, inside. All along the way, we had thousands of people that came out and walked with us. And 2010 really, I think, was the year that unleashed, right, the power of young people. And we see that throughout history, right? It's usually, and sorry for the more well-seasoned people, but the more well-seasoned people have responsibilities, right? You can't just take off and walk, for 4 months. Who can do that here? Who wants to do that here? That's the other question. In 2011, we ramped up again and started pushing and pushing. And one of the things that I learned early on was that this issue, as much as they want to make it, this issue is not about being a Democrat or a Republican. This issue is so much broader than that. And only when we make it about being a Republican and a Democrat is that we allow people to hide, right, in those labels and not do anything. And so in 2012, there was a senator from South Florida, Marco Rubio, who said, I want to be the hero. I want to save these kids. I said, okay, you be the hero, save us, right? So we started working with him on a DREAM Act legislation. It was going to be the Republican DREAM Act. I think the acronyms, because they're into an acronym, so it was not going to be DREAM, but Achieve, the Achieve Act. So with the Achieve Act, there was all this regulations, and we thought, well, the president can do this too. And if he's going to make it a law, might as well just have the president do it, which would be something, you know, executive, but at least it's going to give us relief. So the morning that Marco Rubio talked to me and explained his legislation is the moment that right after we came together and I said, let's contact the White House and say, hey, you know Marco Rubio, the guy that potentially can be a vice presidential candidate and potentially can bring on board a lot of Latinos and those voters that you want? Well, we can jump on board on him and work with him on this legislation, or you can do this and we jump on board on whatever it is that you're going to do. And I think it's been 4 years, or no, actually no, 2 years, gosh. Time flies. We could give you a little bit more insight into it. But we got a meeting right away with the White House. And we got a fair warning how that was not a good idea. I won't go into details just yet. I think it's still too soon. And we were able to make the White House believe that this was the right thing to do. And a lot of people are like, well, you know, it was a political move. And my answer to that is always, isn't good politics supposed to drive good policy? So good for President Obama, who jumped on this opportunity. Because look at the opportunity he opened for millions, potentially, of people. So in 2012, when DACA was announced, we decided that we were going to help those young people. And I'm so proud of the fact that because of DACA, not only have those young people been able to go to school, not only have those young people been able to legally work, because one of the things that we started getting was, okay, my job now really wants to hire me on the books. How do I do that, right? Be able to start contributing, being able to start traveling. But one of the things that it did is that, funny enough, because some of these dreamers were able to travel abroad, they were able to go to their home countries and get those green cards that they had been waiting for them. So a lot of young people have also been able to get green cards and start in a path to becoming citizens because of DACA. Not a lot of them, a handful of them, but some of them. And the other thing that I think also DACA did was it changed, again, the culture, right? The paradigm of how we see immigrants and how now the dreamers are these lovable kids that the nation is behind. But that now we're saying it's me, but it's also my family, right? It's my parents who are the original dreamers, who were the ones that instilled in us this American dream, who were the ones that said, I want to come to this nation to give a better opportunity for my family and for my children. And so we've been fighting and we've been working really hard now for the president. He has a list of perhaps 10 pages of solutions and things that he can do administratively to make the lives of immigrants better. And one of the things that he can do is, if he was to, the Department of Homeland Security was to look at the legislations and the way they've had since the 1990s, since 1986, outdated in a different way, potentially today, and I learned this through a lobbyist that works with doctors and nurses, actually. You guys are pretty smart, huh? They found out, and they do this only, they don't do just temporary status, they get green cards. They found out that if they were to interpret the law in a certain way, it could potentially give millions of people's green cards, right? And so they were doing it more for the profession of the medical profession, but it opens the door for a slew of other people in the country. So I think that for us and for the work that we're doing, as soon as Mark said, do you want to help, do you want to do something, I said, oh, let's do a Google Hangout. And he said, why don't you come over here? And I said yes, in a heartbeat, because I, in a way, feel really grateful, because I know there are young people all across the nation that are in complete despair. The news don't really share this as much, but I've heard of many young people that turn 18 and commit suicide because they don't know what to do. Their dreams of going to school, or they receive their letters, but it's contingent to them being able to have a status. So for all those young people, for our families, for what you're doing in the country, what you are doing here, it's really the microcosm of what needs to happen across the nation. And I am so proud to be here and share with all of you that good news. And I don't know if you know this, how important it is what Loyola is doing for the community and what it's doing for immigration reform and for justice, throughout, not just here in the United States, because one of the things about the United States is that the world watches what the United States does. So how we treat immigrants, how we treat these young people, it's being watched all across the nation. So I don't know if you guys have questions, but I definitely, would take some questions if you have.